Kakati-Shah, your host for the Uma Show. Welcome to your one-stop journey to feeling empowered. We want you to be bold, be you, be Uma. We are a platform for change. We build confidence. We empower our members. We are your voice. Today, our theme is diversity and inclusion through art. And I'm so excited to be joined today by Vicky Vyas, who is here from Toronto. Hi, Vicky.
Hi, everyone.
And she is known, or once upon a time was known as Canada's most controversial artist. So a warm welcome to you, Vicky. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, considering all the circumstances, feeling really great.
I know, right? In the middle of quarantine, everything going on, but you look beautiful as always.
Thank you.
And before we get started, are there any shout outs you want to give to anyone out there who may be watching today?
Maybe to my children and also all the fellow artists out there who, dream to follow their passions. So.
Oh, I love that. So Vicky, let's get started. Vicky from Toronto. Tell us about your life's journey. We want to hear about you. We want to hear about your upbringing, where you were born, where did you grow up? So tell us a bit about yourself.
So it's funny because, considering I would be second generation Canadian, my parents came here from India in the early 70s. So
which part of India?
Northwest Gujarat. So for them, it was a little bit different because, times have changed and there's little pockets of areas where you can go to as a newcomer to any country right now. And for them, everything was, starting from scratch. Like they didn't have these places to go, people to turn to, everything was foreign to them. So, being brought up with, some of their ideals and then some of our own, being of that generation, of the second generation, I think anywhere, Canada, US, England, anywhere, really, there's a certain, there's something that we all connect to in terms of, having those conflicting sort of ideals and trying to figure out who we are truly. So as I was saying, my parents, came here, but they kind of migrated to places where there weren't a lot of diversity. And I always sort of struggled with my identity as a result of that. And I'm in Toronto now, the heart of multiculturalism and diversity. So it's quite different from where I grew up, where there was.
And how long have you been in Toronto for now?
About 7 years, but I did grow up in Toronto until I was about 8 or 9, and then moved out to, other areas where, and that's where I think I started seeing some of these changes where I was a token person of color, and, just based on your complexion, like how differently you're treated. And even, I talk to my own children now in terms of, discrimination that I faced as a child versus what it is now. It's a completely different experience for those of us who are in my age group. And it's something that nobody else would understand unless, you were there and you were part of that sort of
actually really resonates with me personally, because I, as you know, was born and brought up in the UK, in London, in a very lily white neighborhood. Initially, my dad was a doctor. My mum was in the scientific field as well, and a musician. And, we were sort of brought up in an area. I was the only brown child. And my experiences of actual racism wasn't just verbal, it was physical as well. It was very different to the very subtle, more so subtle these days that you see. So it's the same thing about, talking to the kids as well, when they kind of bring back stories or whatever, and they're young, but it's really important to get that message across. I'm so happy how you sort of mentioned that and actually felt that yourself. So thanks for bringing that up.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think you hit it on, hit the nail right on it, because it's the physical. Nobody would dare in this day and age, touch somebody in any sort of way to, call out any form of, difference in your skin or anything. But I vividly, as a child, remember somebody grabbing my face and opening my mouth, and it was so traumatic. And they said, "Oh, your gums are different because you're brown."
Gosh.
And so as a child, something like that, it sticks with you. So you're always trying to conform to what you believe others, want you to be. So it's really hard to figure out who you are truly and be strong and assertive and have that voice too.
And it gives you, that is what forms your identity, right? I think a lot of this conversation is going to lead in that direction. So you've had these experiences. How would you say that impacted your life's journey and then your future career choices?
I think growing up, especially, being brought up in a South Asian family where, we didn't, at that time when I was growing up, I didn't talk back to my parents. And, although as I grew older, I was more freely expressive or free to express myself. We didn't have a lot of voice growing up. We couldn't ask questions. It was a yes or no answer. If we said, can we do this? Or there was no answer. It was just an understood no. And, and that's where we change things with our own children, I think, or these new generations where I think that is where this journey really started, because I had this voice inside that I wasn't sharing. And, I wanted people to know there's more to me. Indian people aren't people who just have their hair, because people would say, oh, you don't look Indian. But Indian people are not people who just have their hair back in a braid with a bindi on their head. That's not an Indian person, or, or even a Pakistani person, because that's, it's the labels, you Paki, but it's not. They were misinformed. And there's that ignorance that, I was trying to break out of that to help people learn, to help people grow. And I think that's where I started using my art because I was so shy and I didn't have that voice, and I wasn't taught to, be vocal, be loud, and, use your voice to express yourself.
Absolutely. And that was really, really well put, Vicky. And I think as another personal example is that, especially when we were growing up at school, it was very much, and that was just a generation thing too, not necessarily a color thing, but back in our day, it was very much like, okay, you're a girl, you cross your legs, you always, dot your I's and cross your T's no matter what. You just sit there, cross your hands, fold your arms, and you're always behave in a ladylike manner. You were always just to take things as they are, accept it, have a smile and go on. And that is in a way how we were brought up. I know brought up in the UK, for you in Canada, it was very, very similar in many, many ways. And I think in this day and age, the way our children are being brought up is to have a voice, to say, okay, that isn't right, or I'm going to question that. And yes, we see it in different ways, like they talk back from a younger age. But the other side of that is they're starting to question things earlier. They don't just take things at face value because you think, oh, something's happening and you should just take it because I've told you so. It's more like you can question, okay, well, why is that? And they have that level of curiosity, that interest, that really in our days, it was burning curiosity. Did we often get it answered? No, we have to find the answers ourselves. So now it's almost challenging everybody, ourselves, everyone out there to really think outside the box, I think. So like the analogy that you gave over there. So I'm going to ask you next, Vicky, that, one of the things I really, really, really admire about you is your ability to always put a smile on your face and be positive, no matter what the situation is. So I would love for you to share an actual example from your life that you managed to turn around, where you turned something around and you turned it up into a positive situation, and you picked yourself up and you just went for it.
There's many, many examples of that, because it's constant, challenges, trials and tribulations in life. And I think that's just it, is, just that perseverance to push through. And, it's easy to get down, and a lot of people do. And I think that's where I feel fortunate, where I can use my art in a way where I'm able to speak and express not only how I feel, but those trials and tribulations, the voices unheard of other people as well, that I learn about. And it strikes something in me, because it's sort of what we were talking about, where, there's a time where, especially when it wasn't a digital age, where when you're taking photos, you're smiling. One of my paintings talks about this. And it's where in photos, we're always smiling, we always put on this front, but nobody truly knows what's happening in the background. And, with all this talk about mental health, with mental health awareness as well, it's bringing to light that, somebody's smiling and happy and just going about their day. Sometimes that's just a cover. And, you know, I've had a lot of challenges in my lifetime. And that's why I can't pinpoint just one, but it's allowing myself to, I think the key words are be kind to yourself.
Mm,
And when you are kind to yourself, every little step that you take forward is an accomplishment,
yeah,
an achievement, instead of, you know, knocking yourself down further. And it's baby steps, but taking those baby steps, you know, allows you to recognize that you are doing something for yourself. And I think
yeah,
that's the key thing is you have to do it for yourself. That's the only way you will actually, you know, persevere, because, you know, that's that feel good. And, you know, I was hit by an 18-wheeler truck at one point, and wasn't able to walk, lost my memory for a
and
few
remind me
months.
for everyone who's watching this, when did that happen? Kind of
That was
what
in
stage of your life was
2001,
that?
2001, December 6th, 2001. And that was a real key pivotal moment for me, because in terms of my art, it was finally, you know, I had my first show on Broadway in New York, a solo exhibit. My works were featured in all the papers. It was in the background of television shows. It was on the news. It was just a lot of media attention, just about my work at the time. But we're also going back in time where I was one of few people, probably in Toronto at the time, who were speaking about that diaspora
Mm,
of, you know, that second generation Canadian, or anybody really for that matter. And it was those identity struggles, because there weren't a lot of people talking about it at the time. And you know, fast forward, you after that accident, I stopped painting and stuff for a long time. So when I fast forward, there are so many South Asian artists now, you know, talking about similar things, doing similar things, but creating art. Whereas when I started, there was just this small collective of South Asian artists at the time. And I feel fortunate to be a part of that. But, you know, it's again, just doing what you're passionate about. And I guess in terms of, you know, those challenges, there's challenges every day, you know, even up until just recently. I'm still served with many challenges, but I
yeah.
just take each day at a time. And you know, it's when you internally are happy, I think you can, you know, radiate that towards others. And it's an energy that you give and get, and it helps you get through your day to day. So
Absolutely. And
I
I
don't know
think
if
the
that really
conversation
answers
that
the question.
you and I had in the past was about that, is that how you radiate energy, but also from each other. You know,
Yes,
people are connected. And something I remember having a conversation with you about was just that how you can pick up positive energy from other people. You know, we all
absolutely.
go through things. Our lives are, this is what life is about. You know, we humans, as humans, we are sort of being tested constantly. But, you
Yeah,
know, having that ability to kind of rise above it, it's not easy. It does challenge you. You have to go against your demons sometimes. You have to go against your morals. You just have to go against it. But you always do. And part of it is because of your support network, your friend circle as well, and your ability to sort of convert sort of a negative voice in your head to having, you know, what are the things you enjoy in life? What are the sights or the smells and the sounds that really motivate you, right? And to kind of hold
absolutely.
those, I think. And I really found that with you, but it's such an important message, I think, to really resonate to the audience and the viewers that are watching this today as well, about sort of having that pick me up as well. So
And
thanks for
gratitude.
sharing that.
It's the key word is gratitude. Like if you can find those, you know, I try to do that for myself, or just 3 things in the day that was uplifting or that you enjoyed, where you took a moment to just slow down. And I think that's the beauty of this time in COVID. As much as we're cooped up and, you know, not able to get out and be around others, it really enables us, aside from work, you know, we're home closer to our families. And as much as we want to also pull our hair out, for me, because I've got a teen, it's also a time where I can slow down in some time, you know, during the day, where I can go out and, you know, enjoy an espresso on the balcony. Which otherwise, when we rush through our day, we miss out on those simple pleasures. And I think
You
it's
take things
so
for
important.
granted.
Absolutely.
We take things for granted. And I think you're right. You know, it's gratitude. We slow down. There are, you know, it's always about looking at the coin. I say, you know, you could look at the tails or the head side. Which side of the coin are you looking at? I always look at the positive side. Same with you. And I think that's part of it. You know, the grass is green on the other side. That's an attitude. But let's think about that. You know, we are on the other side now. Let's think of the positive things out of that.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for sharing that, Vicky. my next question is, so obviously you are an extraordinary artist. Tell us about the piece behind you. That's one of your pieces, right?
Yes. So the piece behind me, it's actually
I couldn't help noticing how beautiful it was.
It's in my home. You know, the inspiration of the story behind it is really, if you can't really see in detail, but the lines represent mine and my children's initials. So it's really just a personal piece that done in our homes, from our first home to this is our third. It's just something that we've always done in our spaces. And yeah, it's just
beautiful, and it's personal. It's your touch. So when did you first get into art? And how did you find out you even had a real talent in it, I guess?
You know, that's the funny thing is I truly believe that everybody's got that gift, whatever that talent may be, but it's how you grasp that and allow yourself to learn and grow from it. Because to be honest, I used to draw like any other little 5-6-year-old, because little kids like to draw and paint and scribble and be creative. And I was one of those kids, but I vividly remember it was in grade 1, and there was this little Asian girl named Frances, and she held up this picture she did. And in my little 5 or 6-year-old eyes, I remember looking at that picture and I was like, wow, it looks like a photograph, which I'm sure it didn't. But that was the first time where I realized that something could be brought to life just through a drawing. And I think that's what piqued my interest, and I continued to just, draw on my own. I'd learn from others, characters, whatever, just doodles. And over time, I just got better at it. And I'm not the best, but I'm not the worst.
Right.
And that's why I say sometimes the most incredible artists are those who don't have formal training, because they're truly expressing. Whereas for myself, because I was always the art girl, the art student, I was always doing art. It was expected that I went into, a visual arts program. And I went to York University for my undergrad and specialized in painting. And they don't necessarily teach you how to create the art, but they do teach you to critique. And when you're constantly critiquing, then you're sometimes thinking too much about your art. Whereas, artists who are just creating for their own self-pleasure, I think it's the most beautiful art, because there's not this constant, critiquing in their head, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing? They're just truly, freely expressing. And that's why one of my favorite types of art, which I find the most beautiful, is children's art, because they're not thinking, they're just creating. And it's just
pure. And it's
pure. And it's the most beautiful
imagination coming out. Yeah.
So, that's why I say, that's what really sparked my interest. But I think that anybody's capable of, being their own artist and creating for themselves. So,
and it's therapeutic as well, isn't it? Sort of just getting out there. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, for me, I used to love sort of twiddling in oil paints when I was younger. And for me, it was a bit more, again, formal education in it, but it was just so refreshing. You could just clear your mind. Other things were going on, whether it was exams or tests, whatever it was. But it was just so you could just get away from everything. And that's certainly what I took from it. I thought it was amazing. So from your perspective, obviously, coming from a South Asian background, art isn't a typical career that our parents' generation thought as a career. It was more like a hobby. How did you kind of turn it, I guess, into a career, number one? And secondly, did you find that support network at home or elsewhere in terms of how that would, support you to do this and pursue this as something that you're actually very talented in?
Well, it's kind of a funny story, because I think it was the same for my parents, where because it was just, through the counselors or the guidance counselors and everyone at school, it was this understanding that I would go to one of the best art schools, which at the time York has an incredible art program, theater, dance, visuals, everything. And so it was just expected that I would be going there. And my parents, they didn't know. So they just kind of went along with it, because that's where, the way that I was sort of being pushed. And, just saying that she's talented, you don't want this to go to waste, but they didn't know anything about it either. So they just kind of went along with it. But I always tell the funny story of once I graduated, because you do a 4-year honors. And that's the other thing is people are like, oh, well, what did you do? Fine arts, haha. But the thing is, it's a 4-year honors degree. You have to uphold a certain grade, as well as being accepted in the program, which is really difficult. And I did it, but it becomes something that people are like, haha, what do you do for your exams? Just draw a picture, but it's not. And in any case, when I did graduate and, with the South Asian uncles and aunties coming to your home, they'll be like, oh, so what did you do? So beta, what did you do? You finished school, what did you do? And I'll be like, oh, fine arts. And they're like, oh, finance, very good, that's amazing, finance. And I'm like, no, fine arts. And they're like, their face is just like, what? What did she's like, oh, okay. Like drawing, painting, like, what is that?
Oh,
so, it's funny because that's just what it is. And, I wish I had learned more of the business side of it, to be honest, because I've made some really bad decisions in terms of sales that were potentially like, could have been, it's not even just about the money. It's about, if you learn and understand how art works, a big sale to the right collector, that's where your work gets noticed. And that's what it's about, is people recognizing your style, seeing the value in it. And, I've made some mistakes, but that's okay.
And that's life,
Yeah, that's life. And I wish I had known and learned a little bit more about the business side of it, because they just kind of teach you to, create and critique. And it's okay.
That's great to know. Yeah. And also that sort of shows there's more than just one process. To your point, you studied it, but you studied the art itself. Well, what happens after that? How do you turn it into a career? In a way, you can't unless you start thinking about, okay, well, how do I monetize from this? In the sense of, okay, I'm producing these amazing works of art. You've got bills to pay, or you think, I want somebody else to see it. How do you go to galleries? How do you do the whole process? And I think you've been so successful in that. So I want to come now to my next question. And I think we're all dying to hear this. You were once known as Canada's most controversial artist. So spill the beans. Tell us about that. How did you call that title?
I think the title really, to be honest, I feel as though it came from, like I said, it was a time where there was just these few artists talking about these issues or things. And, it was very, as it was, people who talk about things and stir the pot a little bit, people don't like that. And the title really came from the fact that I come from a Hindu background, and some of my images, because they have, religious sort of deities in them. Like I have Krishna and the gopis, for example. I have Krishna and Radha in the backgrounds of some of my paintings. And to put that, in the painting with women who are topless. So automatically people are going to be like, oh, Krishna and the gopis. I understand modern gopis, they're topless, wearing jeans. And obviously and understandably, somebody who's quite religious would get really offended. So I had a lot of people writing into the papers about me saying, I'm a Hindu person. I'm very offended by this work, because it was a full page color spread in one of the Toronto newspapers here. So when people see that on a weekend, in the weekend paper in a full color spread, it's something to talk about, and people get very offended. So there was a lot of, but they always say, good or bad publicity is.
It's publicity.
Publicity. Got people talking about it anyway. And
you're very modest, Vicky. I've got to say, you've had tons of publicity. And you're quite no name in the art world, but so just wanted to put that out there for everyone. So.
Yeah, no, thank you. But it's, I think that's where it sort of started, because just people who didn't, when you see art in a gallery, you walk away with your own perception of what that means. You have no understanding of what the artist's intention was, what their artist's thinking was, what their, ideas or inspiration was. And that's the beauty about art. There's so many meanings. It's what you take from it. And it's you know, the people who were offended enough would come to my receptions and come in like storming in saying, I walked by this gallery all week long, and, you know, I'm finally here because I want to know, what were you thinking? And then, you know, I just take the time to talk to them, and to see them walk out of there saying, wow, thank you. You really opened up my eyes, you know, and I can't do that for everybody. But when I talk about my intention behind the piece, my intention, you know, your perception of and meaning behind it is yours, and that's what art should be. It's
Absolutely.
it's how you connect to it.
It's your voice. It's your voice. It's your interpretation. And I love that. I love that. So that actually brings me nicely to my next question. So as we think about diversity and inclusion, can you share the meaning behind some of your pieces? Obviously, you've talked about some of the, you know, you put some deities in there, some of the Hindu deities. Can you tell us a bit? I noticed you do some pieces on Ganesh, for example, as well. So just tell us a little bit about the driving story behind that.
Okay, so really, a lot of what I do, it's obviously, you know, I don't just throw things out there without understanding it, researching it, learning it myself. And with Ganesh especially, although I'm Hindu, and born into Hinduism, but I'm more spiritual, because I do believe the essence of all religions is the same: do good, be good, help others. You know, so I believe in religion more as an energy, I guess,
right,
or the universe.
Yeah.
But I do connect very much with some of the stories, the myths. It's like, you know, Greek mythology, but this is Hindu mythology and stories of the gods and goddesses. And, you know, with Ganesh particularly, I have this connection because I love the idea of Ganesh being the remover of obstacles. And the pieces I'm doing, as I spoke about earlier, a lot of my work is about trials and tribulations in life, my own and others. And right now, you know, I went through my own sort of challenges with mental health more recently. And as a result of that, recognizing that people look at me and they would never see anything, because if you've seen me on an every, you know, I love people. I genuinely love people, and like a little bit more than I should, because I have this love towards people.
And you're a people person.
I am a people person. Yeah. And so, you know, I like making people laugh and smile. And when I talk about energy, I want to radiate that good energy towards others and uplift. And just like we can give good energy, we also can draw negative energy from people. So it's difficult, because when you're not in the best place, you got to really, there's a fine balance where you don't want to suck or absorb too much negative energy. But getting back to the Ganesh, you know, as I started learning a lot more about mental health and how people, I find, are always masking it, you know, especially in the South Asian community. They don't talk about it. They don't understand it. My mom, you know, when I was going through some stuff, she'll be like, oh, you know, beta, you stop eating meat, or you stop doing this. And I'm like,
and then things will be better.
Yeah, they think it, like, it's just they're thinking that it's other sources of unhappiness or whatever it is. So these Ganesh pieces, they're about, so there's kind of masks on them, and the colors are quite vibrant. I don't have them here in my studio. I'm just completing them.
And you have a website, so we can always share that at the end, maybe.
Yes,
people can check that out.
They're not up yet, but they will. The new pieces will be up soon. But the colors represent lightness over dark, because without darkness, there wouldn't be light. Without light, there wouldn't be that dark. But it's like the yin and the yang. You need that little bit of darkness in order to, you know, recognize the light and embrace it. Like, you know, you need sadness to feel like happiness, truly.
Yeah.
And so these pieces are, you know, anger to find love, but the Ganeshas, there's a mask over the eyes to show that every single person out there, everybody has some form of mental health. It's the degree of what they have it. You know, somebody who has issues lining up their shoes, like when they come home every single day, they have to be in the same spot. It's mildly OCD. That's a form of mental health, but it's one that's not controlling their life. You know, they're able to control that. So everybody's got some form of it.
And that's a really, really, really powerful message. So thanks for sharing that, Vicky. And also, you notate the pieces. So you actually keep some sort of like a journal, sort of writing book, very eloquently worded notations about that. So tell us a little bit about that as well, because obviously we know you as Vicky the artist,
Yes.
but you also write as well.
I do. And a series that I'm completing, the Ganesh series, which are all about mental health, but one that I'm truly, truly passionate about right now, because it's, again, something that I've been working through and dealing with, that a lot of women, especially every woman, but South Asian women particularly, don't speak out and use their voice enough. And so this series is about voice, and it's the voice that we've suppressed, and many women suppressed for so long, in terms of, things that have happened, things that are happening. And so I'm doing this series about voice, but it's specifically around the ideas of sexual abuse. And because one incident, it doesn't have to be rape, it could even be just being groped, but how that affects somebody moving on throughout their life, right into their adult years, holding on to something like that. And so it's a collection of stories, short stories that I'm writing. And there's paintings that go along with these short stories. The short stories is quite a number of them. However, I'm going to select maybe 12 paintings to represent some of those key or pivotal paintings.
I love that. Can't wait to see them when they come out. So I'm sure you have many, many fans and budding artists watching today. So as a parting piece of advice, what's a message that you would tell them?
I think two things. One, follow your passion, because if you're passionate about something, it'll drive you and it'll make you happy. And, that's something that nobody can take from you. You do for yourself. And the other thing is, be sure to use your voice, because voice can be a very powerful thing of change. Just like education, the more we educate ourselves, we're able to clearly use our voice to make the changes we need to see in the world, to make it, the world we want to live in for our future generations. And I see some of the changes now through my own children, good or bad, with their, the way they, like we said, they do have their own voice and understanding of things. But it's great because they're not taking things at face value. They're truly understanding and, expressing themselves. And isn't that what we want at the end of the day, is for people to be able to use their voice to express themselves?
Thank you for sharing. And that is all that we have time for today. I want to just give you another big, big thank you to our guest, Vicky Vyas, for joining us today, and to you, our viewers, for watching. Also, we want to hear from you, so please do send us questions or comments. As always, you can tweet us at BeBoldBeUma. You can follow us on social media at BeBoldBeUma. Just get in touch. We want to hear from you. So thanks so much again for joining us on this empowerment journey. We want you all to embrace that inner goddess of go-getting inside each of you. Be bold, be you, be Uma.